Do you know that you can actually migrate to Australia as a permanent resident, just like Canada that has a straight PRO process for immigrants, and also just like the US that has a straight green card for nurses moving into the US. Australia also has the same pathway for registered nurses looking at migrating to Australia as a permanent resident. Now, do you also know that if you are above 45 years old, there is a visa class for you as well to migrate to Australia? Hey beautiful people, welcome or welcome back to the channel. It's Del here and I am your captain. Today we are going to be talking all things Australian visas. Australia is one of the few countries that has loads of visa opportunities for immigrants, and today I'm going to be talking about the top 4 visa types for immigrants looking to move to Australia, most especially nurses. You know I'm a nurse and there's no way I wouldn't put nurses first, because I myself, I've recently started the process to migrating to Australia, and this video is as a result of my research and me passing through the processes myself. So yes, I'm going to be sharing with you also the exact visa type I will be using to migrate to Australia. So if this looks like something you love, make sure you watch this video to the end. If you are a skilled worker, you can utilize any of these visas I will be mentioning in this video. I am not an immigration lawyer. I am not an immigration agent. I am not affiliated with any agent whatsoever. This video is solely my research because I am currently passing through the process. So also make your own research. I am going to be leaving all the links in my description box for you to go on the immigration website of Australia government to read it yourself. These things are not made by me or any agent. These things are made by the Australian government. If you have any questions about it, do well to ask me in the comment section. I'm not an expert, but as much as I know, I'm going to reply you in the comment section, okay? The very first one I would like to talk about is the 482 visa. The 482 visa is a skilled immigration visa that allows skilled workers to move into Australia to work for 2 to 4 years. What are the eligibility criteria for this visa? The first thing you need is to be a skilled worker. Australia has a list of skilled workers on their government website. I am going to leave the link in the description box. All you have to do is to click the link, check on the immigration website of Australia, and if you are among the shortage list, means you are eligible to apply for this visa class. For nurses, you do not have to go through that stress because we are already there. If we are not there, that list does not exist. I'm sorry, I'm just joking, guys. Yes, for nurses, we are there, so there's no point checking, okay? The second thing you need is you need an employer that is willing to sponsor you for that visa. So just like the UK has a tier 2 working visa, Australia has their own kind of visa that is called the 482 visa. So you need an employer that is willing to sponsor you for that visa. Another eligibility criteria is to meet their English language requirements. Now, Australia immigration needs you to pass an English test if you are not eligible for a waiver. So they accept different types of English tests. They accept IELTS, they accept PTE, they accept OET, they accept TOEFL. What can you do with this visa? You can come into Australia with your family, your partner, your children into Australia. You can work for your eligible employer. I haven't seen any restricted hours. The only restriction I have seen is you cannot work for another employer, so you have to work for only that employer. Most employers, when they give you a job, they will offer to sponsor you for the 482 visa, and after you've worked for them for 1 year, 2 years, then they will apply for a permanent residency for you. This depends on your employer and it has to be in the contract if you are signing a contract with the 482 visa. Recently, the Australian government has decrease the waiting time for skilled workers. Waiting time for your application to be reviewed is 3 days. Initially it takes up to 3 months and more, but now they say it's 3 days. I have not seen anybody that have done it for 3 days because of the holidays and all that. I personally have not applied, so definitely when I finish my application and all that, I'm going to give you all the feedbacks. But yes, that is all about the 482 visa. Under the 482 visa, we have the short-term stream, which allows you to stay for 2 years. We also have the medium-term stream, which allows you to stay for 4 years. And then we have the labor agreement stream, which allows you to stay for 4 years as well. They have different costs for each, but it ranges from 1,200 to 2,770. The next visa type I would love to talk about is the 186 visa. Now, the 186 visa has different streams as well. Labor agreement stream, but I will be talking about the direct entry stream. Now, this is a kind of visa that allows you come into Australia as a permanent resident. So you can come into Australia from Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, UK, anywhere at all as a permanent resident. Okay, no, you have to meet some eligibility before you can apply for this visa. The very first eligibility is to be a skilled worker. Take that box already. The next one is to find an employer that is willing to sponsor you for the 186 visa. So some employer will say, no, I will only sponsor you for 182 visa till you work for me after 1 year. But some, especially in the urban area, the suburban area, like rural areas, they are willing to sponsor you from the scratch to become a permanent residency. But of course, there's a clause to it. Nothing is free, nothing goes for nothing. Okay. Some of them will require to work for them for 2 years or more. Most of them I've seen is 1 or 2 years. So yes, I think 1 year, 2 years is not so much of a sacrifice to make for. Don't worry, we'll talk about that later. The next eligibility you need to meet is to have a skilled assessment done. Now, every profession that is listed in the skilled list has a body that requires you to assess your skills. Okay, for nurses, we have what we call ANMAC. It's known as the Australian Nursing and Midwifery Accreditation Council. So they are the body that is responsible for skilled migration assessment. So do not confuse AFRA with ANMAC. The AFRA is responsible for licensure. They give you your license, they assess your license and all that. However, ANMAC is responsible for your immigration skilled assessment. Okay, so they have to assess you and say, okay, this person has worked for so time, this person has a license from AFRA, this kind of points. We give them 5 or 10 points. Okay, that's the job of ANMAC. So you need a positive skills assessment from ANMAC. They check your documents, can give a negative or a positive feedback. So for you to be eligible to apply for the 186 visa, you need a positive skills feedback from your skills assessment board. For nurses is ANMAC. Okay, I'll be doing a separate video for how you can apply for ANMAC skills assessment. So if you are interested, please make sure to subscribe to stay updated. You also need to have at least 3 years working experience in your chosen field. Okay, so these are the major eligibility for you to even apply for this visa. You also need your English language test. For the ISCS, you need a minimum of 6 in each band, and for the OET, you need a minimum of B in each band. For the PTE, you need a minimum of 65 in each band as well. I'm not sure for the TOEFL, but I'm going to leave it on the screen for you to see. You are a permanent resident, so everything that is due a permanent resident, nominate your family to come into Australia as a permanent resident. You can, there are loads of options for you. You can live indefinitely in Australia. You can apply for the Medicare, which is like the subsidized government healthcare for them, schooling and everything. That is it for the 186 visa. Now let's go over to a more exciting one, which is called the 189. 189 visa is almost like the 186 visa. So everything you need to get your English language, you need to be in the skilled profession, you need to get your skilled immigration assessments from ANMAC or any other body you are eligible to apply with. You need to have minimum of 3 years working experience. But the good thing about the 189 visa is you do not need to have an employer. Yes, you can go into Australia without a job. How can you apply for the 189 visa without a job or a nominator? You have to be below 45 years for this visa class. So if you are above 45 years, please do not even bother with this visa type. You might not be successful. You have to be invited. So how do you get invited? I'm going to do a separate video about this, but literally you need to submit an expression of interest so that you have all the skills and want to apply for a permanent residency. This is like a point-based visa. You need to score 65 and above to be eligible to apply for this visa. You can literally work anywhere in Australia. You can sponsor your family members to become permanent residents. You can live in Australia indefinitely, and you can also apply for your citizenship after about 4 years. So yes, this visa costs about 4,220 Australian dollars. It's similar to the Canadian pool where you submit your application. They just invite you to apply and then you apply for this. Note that this is self-sponsored. No employer is going to pay this for you because you don't have a job. So you have to pay these fees yourself, about 4,000 Australian dollars. You pay yourself, pay for your family, do everything yourself. And probably when you get to Australia, you are going to sort out your accommodation yourself. You are coming in alone, so you have to consider that as well. If this is something you would love to do also. Yeah. The next visa type I would like to talk about is the 190 visa. With the 190 visa, it's also called the nominated visa. So as the name states, you have to be nominated by a state. It is a state you have to submit that you are interested in Victoria. You have to submit that you are interested in North Territory or West Australia, any of them you have interest in. Australia has about 9 states or 8 states. We have the Victoria, they have the Tasmania, the Northern Territory, the West Australia, and all that. So one of those states needs to invite you, submit your expression to them, and if they see that we are short of nurses and we need nurses in Victoria, they will not accept your application and invite you over to Australia, and then you apply for your visa. The visa costs about 4,000 plus Australian dollar. Every state in Australia has eligibility. You score above 65. You have to be below 45 years old. You also need to have the necessary skill. And the clause is that whichever state invites you, you have to stay in that state for like 1 or 2 years, depending on the state's criteria. Every state in Australia has their own criteria, so you have to make sure you understand that, sign and accept that before you go on with your visa application. So this visa allows you to stay in Australia permanently. You can apply for citizenship after 4 years. You can bring in your family as a permanent resident as well. The difference between the 189 and the 190 visa is the 190 visa is nominated by a state, while the 189 is independent. You don't need a state to nominate you. You just need to be invited to apply for the visa. So that's the major difference between the two. The costs are almost the same. They all offer the same thing. So that is it, guys. If you are above 45 years old, most of these visa eligibilities will not be applicable to you because you will lose points. Your application might not be successful. So the best way to enter Australia when you are above 45 years old is to go through the TSS visa. With this visa, your employer will nominate you for a short stay skilled immigration, and after you stayed in Australia for 4 years, you can apply for a global talent visa to become a permanent resident. But for these other subclasses, like 189, 186, and 190, your chances are very slim once you are 45 years old. If your age is almost at 45, it's always better to move to Australia with the short-term visa, which is quicker and faster. Work in Australia for a while, and then who knows, that might increase your points. The point-based system, one of the eligibility criteria is your age, and if you've stayed in Australia for a while, it increases your points. So if your age would decrease your points, then I think if you've lived in Australia, that will increase your points. So that might help you as well to get your permanent residency. But with the working class skilled 482 visa, the age criteria does not really apply. I hope this will help you guys in your process to move into Australia. I hope you love my content enough to subscribe to my channel for more. Thank you so much for watching, and until I meet you next time, Happy New Year to you all. I love you all, and thank you so much for your support. Bye.